Welcome everyone who is present to the meeting and welcome to, well, I was going to say welcome to those watching at home, but don't have the live stream working. So we're recording it and it'll be available either later tonight or tomorrow. But still everyone that's seated must use the microphone so that everyone can hear. There is no scheduled fire alarm, so if the fire alarm does go off, it's a real one. The fire escapes are there and there. And introductions. I'm Stephen Watson, the chair. This is Councillor Simon Marlowe, vice chair. Neil Button, interim development management team leader. Rachel Lee, the legal advisor. Steve Fraser-Lim, principal planning officer. Peter Mannings, committee support officer. Martin Plummer, service manager for development management and enforcement. Sarah Saunders, Head of Planning and Building Control, and and Sam Tarl from Hertfordshire Highways. Right, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, just the one from Councillor Vicky Burt, and Councillor Moira Connolly is her substitute for tonight. Thank you.
May I ask again that all participants use their microphones when speaking, as the meeting is being recorded, and as I said earlier, so we can all hear. And do we have any declarations of interest? Okay, members, we have before us the minutes from the meeting held on 4th of December 2024. That's pages 5 to 15 in the agenda pack. If there are no amendments, can we have a proposer for the minutes?
Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Can I make reference to an item on page 10, which is about the amendment motion? That says regarding the proposed uses of the site under licensing terms. I wonder if we could delete licensing terms and perhaps put regarding the proposed live performance uses of the site.
Are the rest of us happy with that? Does that accord with our memory of the meeting?
It's just that land use is a planning matter.
Yeah.
Licensing is not.
Yeah.
And the application was an application only because it had live performance and a bar.
Yeah, someone. So I'll take that as a proposal for an amendment. Does somebody want to second that? No, Councillor Carter. All right, let's have a vote. Any against? And any abstentions? Okay. Yeah, and now, shall we vote on the minutes? Have we? Yeah. Or was it that the amendment? Was that the amended minutes? Yeah. Okay, fine. Okay, so those minutes have been agreed and subject to the amendment. All right, now we have outline approval for a residential development and full planning approval for the construction of a new medical centre, reference 3/24/0294/FUL. This is an outline approval. I'll read that again. Outline approval for a residential development for around 200 new market and affordable homes, including self-build and custom-built homes, new public open space, new ecological areas and other public realm, new pedestrian, cycle and vehicular networks within the site, potential pedestrian connections to the Causeway and Aldridge Way, and associated drainage and SUDS infrastructure, with all matters reserved for later approval. And B, full planning approval for the construction of a new medical centre, car parking area, related drainage and SUDS infrastructure, with associated access to Hare Street Road and enabling works to the existing highway, as defined on the land use parameter and detailed access plans at land north of Hare Street Road, Buntingford, Hertfordshire. So, following a request for extra speaking time from the applicant, can I invite members to consider whether they wish to extend public speaking times slots to 6 minutes? Do I have it? Well, I'm going to propose that. And Councillor Hill seconds. So can I have a vote on that? Do you understand what we're voting for? So the Constitution gives the committee the authority to depart from the arrangements in the paragraphs that say that it's paragraphs 6.5.2 and 6.5.4, which is basically public speakers get 3 minutes each, normally. And I'm proposing we extend that to 6 minutes, as we would for a strategic site. So are we happy with that? Councillor Estop? Yes, right, we're voting. Votes for.
1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
11 against, and no abstentions.
That's fine.
This is what we did last time, if you remember.
So carry on.
Okay,
Just say that's been passed.
that's been passed.
Right, Steve, to present.
Right, yes, I would like to invite Steve Fraser-Lim to present, please.
Thank you, Chair. So here we have the application site outlined in red, which is on the east side of the built edge of Buntingford, bounded by Hare Street Road to the south, the Causeway to the north, and we've got residential development that took place, early residential development around sort of 2015 to the west, and then further to the east, predominantly green agricultural fields. Next slide, please. Views around the slide now. This is the view from Hare Street Road, looking westward, and the new site access will be sort of formed to the right. Next slide, please. Another view along Hare Street Road, looking westward. The frontage of the site is on the right-hand side, where those trees are behind the trees. The trees are on highway land. Next slide, please. And looking looking eastward along Hare Street Road, you can see the site will be further up the hill behind the 40-mile-an-hour line, and you can see other residential development which came forward around circa 2015 on both sides of the road. Next slide, please. This is within the site itself, public footpath which crosses the site, and St Bartholomew's Church is behind the trees to the north. The Hare Street Roads are behind us. Next slide, please. And views looking southwards from Hare Street Road. Earlier development is behind that tree line there, sort of straight ahead. Next slide, please. And this is the view from the northern edge of the site adjacent to the Causeway. We can see the allotments behind those trees sort of straight ahead, and the Causeway behind the main tree line hedgerow to the right. Next slide, please. And the Causeway looking eastward. Next slide, please. And then another view of the site looking northwards. You can see the allotments just on the sort of center of the picture in the distance, and the other earlier residential development to the left. Next slide, please. This is a view from Pipkin Drive, or within the residential development, to the west, and the entrance to the allotments, and the proposal includes potential, or it includes a new pedestrian cycle link, which will then sort of link through at this point into the development. Next slide, please. A view from the northern side of the site, adjacent to the causeway, looking eastwards. Next slide, please. And these are some longer distance views from the fields to the east, looking westward towards Buntingford, and the development is further off in the distance behind that, behind the first, sort of first couple of trees, and behind that sort of hedgerows there. Next slide, please. And again, we've got some further images from the landscape visual impact assessment, which will annotate the site a bit more clearly. But you can see the current view from these positions from public footpaths. Next slide, please. Now, the application itself is a hybrid planning application. So part of the application is submitted with full details, which is the area hatched in blue, and the remainder of the site is submitted in outline, which means that further details will need to be submitted as part of reserve matters at a later date. Next slide, please. So the area in blue, the full details part of the site, is concerns the proposed medical centre, and this is the layout plan for the medical centre. So the access will be from the main access from Hare Street Road into the development, and then there'll be a spur which leads off to the medical centre site. It's a sort of L-shaped building, two-storey building, car parking, and areas of landscaping around the site, and a new public open space will be created in front of the medical centre at the sort of the arrival point into the development. There's also proposal for a bus stop at the frontage of the site on Hare Street Road, and you can see the sort of lay-by for that just there. Next slide, please. The medical centre building is proposed to replace the existing medical centre in Buntingford, but with a larger building, and it includes a number of treatment rooms. This is the ground floor plan, so you can see entrance area is a sort of double height space, which we'll see in a minute. There's a number of treatment rooms that will lead off that space, and other rooms, facilities for running clinics and providing a wider range of medical services than the current medical centre is able to provide on their space that they have as existing. Next slide, please. The first floor includes meeting areas, admin areas for the medical practice. Next slide, please. And these are some of the images of the external appearance, which is intended to acknowledge the sort of agricultural built forms that you might see in the surrounding rural area with this high pitched roof, but also adapted so it speaks a sort of more modern architectural language. Next slide, please. And these are some of the other views of the medical centre from around the site. Next slide, please. And this is the frontage from Hare Street Road. You can see the new bus stop there. Next slide, please. And then the double height entrance space from the new public open space. Next slide, please. And there it is. Next slide, please. This landscaping details have been submitted. These have been sort of superseded by some of the other changes to the drainage strategy and so on for the development. So they were also conditions requiring their approval again. But you can see landscaping within the car park and hedgerows around the car park when viewed from Hare Street Road. New tree planting to replace trees that are lost at the frontage with Hare Street Road. Next slide, please. And then there's a drainage attenuation basin which is proposed to the north of the car park area to meet the drainage runoff requirements from surface water runoff from the medical centre, and that's proposed to be landscaped with a variety of different areas. So you've got a water edge meadow proposed, and then wetland meadow. So sometimes the basin will be dry, sometimes wet, so the landscaping choice will respond to that. Next slide, please. And then you can just see a bit an indication of the sort of slopes down into the basin. So it's intended to be quite a shallow gradient, so that it's more attractive design, less requirement for safety features around the edge. Next slide, please. Now, moving on to the wider site, which is submitted in outline. So the proposals have been part of quite a long period of design evolution. There has been some pre-application events before the application was submitted. There's also been a design review panel review of the proposals, which have all fed into the design proposals. And you can see how the design approach is intended to respond to the site edge, where the eastern edge is adjacent to the agricultural surroundings. And then there's a number of sort of green links which are intended to break up the visual impact of the development, and also to allow for provision of green space, open space, biodiversity enhancement. And next slide, please. And then you can see how that sort of design rationale has fed into the parameter plans, which set the developable areas. So those are the yellow and brown sort of coloured sections of the site. So those are the areas which will accommodate the development. And the parameter plan also includes some other details about the key routes through the development and the different types of streets that will be provided. So a sort of main street from the site entrance, and then more intimate residential streets leading off that, as well as some sort of key corner buildings to accentuate the corners and improve the sort of arrival experience into the development. Next slide, please. The landscape master plan shows a bit further how the landscape edge kind of comes around the site. The intention is to soften the visual impact of the development from other views, with landscaping enhancements to the edges, as well as those green wedges which will run through the development. And also the proposal is to re-accommodate the existing public right-of-way as a bridleway adjacent to the new route through the development, with tree-line landscaping. Next slide, please. This is the indicative master plan. So this is an illustration of how the development could be built out within those parameters that we've just seen, but it will need to be subject to another application for reserved matters. So it's just to show how the amount of development and so on can be accommodated in those parameters using the different constraints. So it's one way of the development being built out, but that it's not the only way. So that would be subject to further submission of reserved matters, not including the medical centre, which is full details. This is just the area surrounding that. Next slide, please. And some slides from the design access statement just showing the different sort of character spaces within the development, the different streets. You've got the main street that runs through with the bridleway next to it, and tree-lined sort of avenue, and then other streets will have more residential, intimate, greater sense of enclosure, as you can see sort of below. Next slide, please. And yeah, and again, a short shared surface space there. Next slide, please. In terms of the transport aspects of the development, there are a number of measures that are proposed as part of the application. One of them is the provision of a footway which will link from Pipkin Drive to the entrance of the site. You can see that sort of red line which comes down, it indicates the area for the new footway. Next slide, please. Then there was also a proposal for bus stops on either side of Hare Street Road at the site entrance, and crossing points from north to south sides of Hare Street Road. Next slide, please. And also a gateway feature and speed change measures, which will be extended further out into Hare Street Road to reduce the vehicle traffic speeds as they approach the site entrance. Next slide, please. And then this just shows sort of access arrangements for larger vehicle servicing for the medical centre. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of sustainability, there's some sort of discussion about this in terms of, how accessible is the site by a range of transport modes, including active travel, walking, cycling. There's been quite a lot of discussion of that in the officer's report. This plan illustrates that there are a number of opportunities for walking and cycling from the development, either into the town centre to the west or to the north, towards Entwistle Middle School, and also to the south down towards the first school or the football club. I should highlight there is actually an error on this slide where it's the sort of the pink route where it says route via Darton Way and Maylon Close. I think that route, as indicated there with the sort of dashed pink line, does cross over some private drives, so it's not possible to travel exactly that route. But I think what the plan's trying to show is that there are options for walking and cycling. So if you were walking that route, you would have to take a slightly different route, which went on different footpaths. Or if you were cycling, you would have to dismount your bike on part of that route on a footpath, or you could go down, travel on the main routes, which link down to London Road. Next slide, please. This slide shows the sort of accessibility of the site from the for walking and cycling isochrone. So the dark purple shows a sort of 800-meter distance, which is a kind of 5 to 10 minute walking distance, which shows you can access the town centre in 5 to 10 minute walking time from the site. And then the sort of lighter purple shows the 1,600-meter walking distance, and that incorporates most of the built area of Buntingford. And then the blue areas are for 5,000, 8,000 meters. So that shows us a distance which is recognised in some of the sort of travel guidance as being a reasonable distance for cycling. So large areas of the surrounding sort of countryside could be accessed within that sort of time frame. Next slide, please. This shows in a bit more detail the accessibility of the site for walking. And so this is the 800-meter walking catchment from the site. So it shows the sort of corner of Station Road and Hare Street, where the co-op is sort of just over 5-minute walking distance. There's a number of other facilities on the High Street which are within that 800-meter walking distance. So, for instance, the Entwistle Middle School is a little bit further away. This is about sort of 15 to 20 minutes walk from the site, and sort of Freeman College as well. But we consider these to be reasonable walking distances for facilities like that. They're the sort of distance that existing residents in Buntingford would often travel on foot to reach those facilities. So overall, we consider this does show the site is accessible via a range of modes, including active travel. Next slide, please. Landscape impacts. This is another sort of area of concern. This is the landscape character assessment, which forms the evidence base for the district plan. And the site in the green is identified as being in the Widial Plateau. So the Rib Valley, the sort of 142 pink area is generally where the sloping areas of landscape as they sort of come up from the Rib Valley, and then the plateau is at sort of higher level, so potentially visible from a wider distance from views. And next slide, please. The landscape visual impact assessment, which is submitted with the application, then goes on to kind of assess where the development will be viewed from in order to kind of come to a judgment of what the landscape impacts will be. And so there's a zone of theoretical visibility, which is the dark, the sort of purpley blue colour. So you can see most of the views of the site will be from the countryside further to the east. Essentially sort of large views. And as you can see, the development is coming up onto a high point of the hill, so that will increase its visibility. And as you'll see in the officer's report, we have identified that there is harm caused by the visual impact, with a high degree of harm initially, but reducing to moderate after 15 years as landscaping becomes more established. Next slide, please. These are some of the views where the landscape impact is the greatest, and from Hare Street Road, sort of immediately next to the development, and these are the sort of views that will be most affected. This will be where the harm has been identified in the landscape visual impact assessment. There's also some views here towards St Bartholomew's Church, but you generally can't see them from this, screened by the existing tree line along the causeway, which means that we feel that the impact on the setting of that heritage asset is there's no harm to that because of there's no sort of intervisibility. Whereas Alswick Hall, which is further to the east, it would be possible to have views of the site and back of the hall from the site. So we've identified that there is less than substantial harm to the setting of that heritage asset. Next slide, please. These are some of the further views of the identified and where the landscape impact will be. It will be visible. There will be change. You can see the site annotated. Next slide, please. And again, you can see those views from the east and the site behind that existing hedgerow, but as on either side of the crest of the hill, so will be visible. Next slide, please. In terms of the drainage strategy, because of the site topography, so you've got a sort of fall to the east, a fall to the west. The site drains in both directions, so there's 2 attenuation basins proposed for surface water. The western catchment will drain it will connect into the existing drainage network in the development, and then sort of feed through to the existing treatment locations. And the eastern catchment will drain to a watercourse, which is that sort of blue line on the right hand side of the slide. Next slide, please. And so just sort of wanted to highlight some of the differences between November 2024, when the application was presented before and the committee made a resolution at that committee. There have been a number of changes since that point. So after the committee, officers were concerned about the reasons for refusal and defensibility. We took advice from King's Counsel, and the Casey advice was that we should report the application back to committee to have some greater clarity on the reasons for refusal, in particular about the policies that were referenced in that, because some of them perhaps were most relevant to the harms that were identified. So whilst we were sort of working through that process, there were some further changes to the situation that arose at that point. Firstly, the publication of the NPPF in the middle of December, and that changed that results in a sort of significant change to national planning policy framework, national planning policy in terms of housing. So the NPPF, the main sort of things around this were a government target to deliver 1.5 million houses in the next 5 years. In order to do that, there was a change to the standard method, or introduction of a new standard method for calculating housing need within districts, which would be mandatory, which resulted in an increase in the housing number, yearly housing number that the East Herts is required to deliver in order to achieve a 5-year housing land supply. So that results in a sort of significant change to our 5-year housing land supply position. It means that we can't rely on allocated sites in order to achieve a 5-year housing land supply. There will need to be new sites which aren't currently allocated in order to achieve that. And then there was also a change of position from the NHS Integrated Care Board. They issued a new response at the end of December, but they did let us know shortly after committee that they were undergoing this exercise and consideration of alternative sites. And then at the conclusion of that exercise, they wrote to us on the 20th of December and advised that they considered this site to be, will support the site's delivery of enhanced medical facilities in Buntingford, larger medical facilities to expand to meet the existing and new need from other housing development, and that they supported this site in principle, subject to a full business case approval. So again, we consider this to be a change of circumstances in the from November, which we feel we needed to advise members of in order to for this to be taken into account as part of decision making. There has also been, as set out in the report, there's a couple of other points where information was available at the time of the November committee and was not included in the officer report. there's an appeal reference there in terms of the Sarat appeal and the weight that the inspector attached to provision of new medical centre. Having sort of regard to the debate, officers felt that that was a mistake not to include that information, and so we've included it now to for members' reference. There is also a reference, again, the written ministerial statement was released in July 2024 prior to the NPPF, and that set out the direction of travel for the government in terms of the new standard method in increasing emphasis on housing delivery, and that wasn't also mentioned. So we felt that we should have done that, so we've included that now. Sorry, just to sort of jump back a bit. In terms of the NPPF, again, I forgot to mention the NPPF also does include a paragraph now about attaching significant weight to delivery of new infrastructure such as health facilities and the early delivery of that. So that's mentioned in the officer report as well. And then on the point of the ICB, I'd also say there has been a bit of confusion about the ICB position, because there has been a letter which has been sent to some councillors on the 9th of January, which sort of was different to what they said in the letter sent to the Planning Authority on the 20th of December. We've clarified that with the ICB, and they've confirmed that that letter was sent in mistake. It was drafted before, it was drafted in November, but wasn't sent out till January, and so it was based on out-of-date information. So they've written to councillors to clarify the situation. So we're clear that the ICB position is as set out in their letter to the Planning Authority on the 20th of December. There's also some discussion in the officer's report around the technical transport note submitted by the applicants, which provides some further detail on the gradients up to the site, which were highway authorities considered to be not, to be a relatively normal, not extreme gradient. Next slide, please. So as a result of this new information, we've because the council doesn't have a 5-year housing land supply, we need to carry out a balancing exercise based on the sort of the balance of considerations and whether the benefits of the application outweigh the harms. And because we don't have a 5-year housing land supply, we have to carry out this exercise with a tilted exercise, in that we have to give great weight. We have to consider that some of the policies around protection of the rural area beyond the green belt and so on are considered out of date in terms of the NPPF if we don't have a 5-year housing land supply. So the weight that should be attached to those policies is less. So as a result of the balancing exercise, we've considered that we need to attach greater weight to housing delivery as a result of the changes to the standard method and the council's housing delivery targets, which have increased, and our positions worsened in terms of 5-year housing land supply since November. And we've also, in light of the additional change of position from the ICB, we've allocated greater weight to the delivery of the medical centre, because we feel that increases the certainty around delivery, that the ICB is now demonstrated that they are wanting to deliver a new enlarged medical facility at this site. And so all the other planning benefits of the application in terms of contributions towards infrastructure, green space, biodiversity, net gain, they remain the same as per the November committee. Next slide, please. You'll recall in the November committee, we identified a number of harms that arose from the development. We don't feel that those have changed since November, so we've attached the same weight to those. And you can see the conflict, the development strategy. So we've given that's a moderate negative weight, because we can't give as strong weight to the policies around, for instance, policy GBR2 around protection of the rural area beyond the green belt. We feel we can't give full weight to that policy in the light of the tilted balance being engaged. We've also given limited negative weight to loss of agricultural land. There was quite a lot of discussion about that in the last committee, and when formulating that, we've had regard to other decisions. So, for instance, the Vistry appeal decision, land east of the A10, that was a 29-hectare site, and the arable land, and the inspector concluded that there was limited harm in terms of loss of agriculture from that development. So this site's 13 hectares, so half the size, less than half the size. So we feel limited weight is appropriate given the guidance we can take from those other appeal decisions. If we try to increase that weight, the weight of harm for loss of agricultural land, it would be hard to justify in light of the recent appeal decision, which is quite, pretty close by. And then in terms of landscape visual impacts, again, we've allocated significant negative weight, reducing to moderate by year 15. And then those other harms in terms of a less than substantial harm to Alderswick Hall and the increased number of vehicle trips, pressure on vehicle junctions, we've allocated moderate weight to that as well. Also based on the weight inspectors give to other appeal decisions, for instance, the Vistry scheme. Next slide, please. And so as a result of those, actually, just before I get onto that, I'd just go highlight to members the update report, and we'll just wanted to go through some of the comments in that. So we have received additional comments from Councillor Jones, raising concerns about the application being reported back to the members of the committee again, and that the circumstances don't justify a change of position from November, and our officer responses provided on that. We've also received 3 further neighbour comments, and they have again raising some similar points there around they feel that the justification for the change of circumstances is not sufficient for the application to be reported back to committee. Again, our responses as noted, and it's also sort of within the officer report as well. Also on point 3 there was that issue on the ICB letter. We've clarified also that they can, how they have gone about the assessment. They've confirmed they have also considered the existing site as well in the centre of Buntingford. And we consider that it's their position. They've carried out an exercise, and that's their set position, as in their comments to us. So we feel that is sufficient for us. Some further comments all addressed there. Hertfordshire County Council have provided a comment. They've just noted the applicant's transport notes, and no additional comments on that or concerns, and also just an additional point around the the CAVAT process for compensating for the loss of the highway trees. There's a approximate figure now available. We're also proposing just a couple of updates. There was an error in the planning balance table of the report. It should say 20%, not 13% for biodiversity net gain. We've just amended the head of term for the CAVAT agreement. We're also proposing to amend condition 17 with regard to the landscaping details, and to include reference to areas for community gardens or edible landscaping. And we just feel that this would provide an enhanced level of landscaping provision that would acknowledge the development on agricultural land. And so, as set out in the officer's report, we consider that the information which has come to light since the November committee, as well as the information which should have been included in that committee report but wasn't, and as well as has changed the planning balance for the application, and we feel that is sufficient to that change to the planning balance is sufficient to in terms of officer recommendation, in terms of that there is a recommendation to grant planning permission subject to conditions and the reasons are set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.